All right, we're going to get this party started. Okay. We have Cassandra Bradley, one of my AT aliens, in the chats. First to arrive. We also have Realign the DJ. What's good, Purple Fam? Yes. Realign the DJ, you must have been reading because you know who we're going to be talking about this week. Yes. All right. We got Christina from Minneapolis. We got Nick from Denver. And we have a little LP music in the background. Waiting for everybody to show up. Where is everybody? Here we go. We got Mila. We got Kim, another AT alien in the house, our second of the day. We always have the Atlanteans here. I'm super excited and sad because Michael Dean is not here with us, if you haven't noticed. It's just me, but I am not alone. And I have a very special guest, and I can't wait to have a conversation with our special guest. We have Sister Charles from Houston. We have Adria, still rocking the Diamonds and Pearls singles box set. We have Wisdom and Love from Minnesota, Purple Army in the house. We have, this is one of my favorite parts of this song. You know what St. Paul and Eric Lees does? They distract me. But we got Laura Guitar from Canada. We got, is it Andre Staley? Hello, young lady. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. We got Arlene. We got Canada in the house. The Canadians are trying to rival the AT aliens. We got JD Washington. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well. All right, we're going to get into this housekeeping. Oh, we can't do that because we got Man Ray. And Man Ray is wishing us a happy 40th week of What Did Prince Do This Week. Time flies when we're having big purple fun. Indeed. We got Annie from Under the Cherry Moon Country. We got Drea Dances from Chi-Town, Chicago. Look at, here we go. Hold on. I got to get my Love Sexy louder because it never can compete with the music. Thank you so much, Love Sexy, for being here today. We got Stephanie Mills. Thank you for being here. We have Kareem. All right, so I don't want to keep my guests waiting. So I'm going to get this housekeeping started with the quickness. We are week 40 of What Did Prince Do This Week? This state of Prince Rogers Nelson is not affiliated, associated, or connected with the What Did Prince Do This Week book club series. We're going week to week, not date to date. You can follow the detailed schedule at our book club website. And you do not need the expanded edition to participate, but this is what the schedule is based on. Expanded edition. We got Raywan in the house. Good morning. I am waiting on my Prince Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe. I ordered from Amazon. How you doing? I'm doing great, Raywan. I hope that Amazon treats your box set with care. There's been some dings on the edges sometimes with box sets, so we'll see if they have learned. We'll find out at the end of the month. Today's will probably only be archived on YouTube at Polished Solid. Please subscribe, like, and help spread the word. Oh my God, good morning, Nikki. It's so fantastic that you're here because we have a special guest that I think that you will love. And the hashtag is WDPDTW for What Did Prince Do This Week? And we are currently listening to Quick to Dismiss from No Words, Eric Leeds, Paul Peterson, 2017. All right. If you notice, I paused for this ending, which I also love. All right. And I have to give a very special shout out to one of my best friends, my bestest of friends, Clarissa James. Thank you for all that you do. All right. Yes, Nikki, we love this album. But again, I don't want to keep my guests waiting. So let's give a grand welcome to the one and only Matt Thorne, who is the author of this. I have the first edition. Unfortunately, Matt, I have the second edition on Kindle, and I realized, you know what? I probably should have bought the physical book.
I can hold up the other one, the new edition.
There you go. Here we go. Look, there we go. So this is the first edition, and that's the second edition. We have Sakia saying, hi, Matt. And let's see. Yep. And so this is really fantastic. So we're going to get into the first and second edition. And before we do that, I kind of want to take a little bit. I'm a bit of a nerd, as you probably already know. Yes, Law, you got to get those. So one is the first edition, and the other one was the second edition that Matt was holding up. And we're about to get into the second edition, actually all the editions. So let me, before we get into my nerd part, I do want to take a couple of minutes to talk about this really amazing podcast that Matt has already done at the PC Principle. And the interviewer is Troy Foreman, and Troy does a really fantastic job of asking Matt all the questions you would normally ask someone. So I'm not going to re-ask the same questions about Prince's legacy and, you know, how Matt got into Prince and all of that, because you can listen to almost an hour and a half of that on Troy's amazing podcast. And as you know, if you go to the book club website and you go down to the bottom of the page, you will find the slideshow. And if you click on all the images, they take you places. And this one will take you to that podcast. So just be aware of that. And then, look, here we go. We got Joy Dance says, I have the first edition. You got to get the second edition. Welcome, Matt, from Christina, who is based in Minneapolis. We got Blade Brown, my alliterative brother. Yes. So this is where I'm going to want to get a little nerdy. So this is the second edition of your book. This is the cover, which I love. It's the black and white cover. But as you notice, I held up the U.S. pressing, which was the first U.S. pressing, which was released in 2016, if I got my dates right, because sometimes I mess up dates. But when I first got this book, and you know, I have this cover, which is like from the New Tour, which is one of my favorite eras, and I was like, oh my God, this is a cool cover. But then I saw this cover, and I was like, why is there a different color? But this was the first UK pressing, if I got my information correct.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And then there was a second UK pressing in 2013. So the original came out in 2012. This is 2013, but it says updated edition. So that was my first question. What's the difference between the 2012 and the 2013 version?
I'm loving this detail. This is absolutely the sort of thing I love to talk about. So there are various different updated editions. So basically, the original version came out in the UK in 2012. Then for the 2013 edition, I just updated what had happened with Prince in between 2012 and 2013. Then the American edition came out in 2016, and I wrote a further afterword for that. So in order, it kind of goes the first UK, then the UK paperback, then the US edition, exactly as you've got it there. And then this new edition is more still. So the latest edition has 50 new pages that cover from sort of 2013 to 2016, pretty much, and afterwards as well. The releases that happened after Prince passed. So that's the way. That's the difference between them all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being so nerdy. So now I'm going to ask you an even nerdier question. So can you talk, and also I'm a graphic designer by trade, even though
Sure.
I'm a professor now. But I'm curious, like, did you have any input in the covers? And if so, did you have input into the photos that were selected? And then can you talk a little bit about why you changed I mean, of course, I have my theories about why you might have changed the photo on the second edition, but it still is from the same photo shoot of the first edition. So can you talk a little bit about the cover design?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to double check. Yeah, so it's a Deborah Feingold photo shoot that the first, second, and fourth pictures are all taken from. So they're all from the same photo shoot. I can't really take any credit for it. I mean, I did say when the book was initially published, I said to the designer, I'd really like this to be really simple. I just want it to be a picture of Prince on the cover. And also now we're dealing with sort of particulars. The UK version is only just called Prince, and it's the American version that is called Prince, the Man and His Music. And the reason for the change of the title with the American edition was to sort of emphasize, just to make people sure they realize the emphasis in the book, that the fact that the music is so prominent in there. So initially I was also sort of thinking that wouldn't necessarily be something that would need to be sort of clarified. I mean, there are lots of interviews in the book, and there are lots of biographical detail as well, and it is a biography, but the focus is really on the music. And one of the things that I argue about in the book, or suggest in the book, is that the music was so much an important part of his life, and he used his music almost as a diary. So that was the reason for the subtitle on the American edition. But so yeah, so I just said, could you come up with a photograph of Prince, because there's lots of pictures in the books as well, and so basically I went through all the pictures in the book we chose together. I sat down with the designer and we chose, we went through and worked out what we could afford and which ones worked best, and tried to tell a story in the pictures. And I'm quite pleased that there's a few pictures in the book that were either given to me by people or hadn't really been seen quite widely before. So that was quite a nice thing to have. But with the cover picture, it was the designer, I think he's called Luke Bird, who works for Faber, who just came up with this brilliant photo. And at the minute I saw the first one, I just absolutely loved it. We did look at all the other, there's about 15, I think, pictures from this shoot, which is a really early shoot. And so he chose, well, together we looked at that one, but he did all the design, which I really liked. And then, but it was felt that the editor and I had this sort of funny thing of like, could we make the type as small as we possibly could to begin with? So the idea was that if you were a Prince fan, you'd spot him immediately and like pick it off the shelf because you'd see him and you didn't need to see it. But then with the paperback, we wanted to go, it's aiming for a wider audience, wanting to get to more people. So we made the Prince, his name bigger, kept my name the same, and changed the design slightly. With the US pressing, I didn't really have any say in that at all, but I did get to approve it. So basically they said that they wanted to go with a different picture and they wanted to go with a different era. And like you, I love the new tour era as well. So I was delighted to see that. And just to say, so the book's been published, I think, in something like 8 or 9 countries, and they've all got different pictures. So there's further for those people who really want to go. And some of them are quite unusual. Like there's one, I think it's the Dutch edition, which has got him with a hat. It's quite an obscure picture. I didn't even know where it's from, and it looks really different. So it's something that they all the different countries have chosen different pictures. It wasn't the case that sort of I got to say that, but they've all gone with the same thing of the single image of Prince, just different images. So, but I really like the American one. And then this time they said that they wanted, with the American edition, to do something different, and they'd always liked the look of the British book, but they didn't want to repeat the British picture, so they chose a different picture from that session.
Wow. So, I mean, you answered one of my other questions, which was why did you add the man and his music? And so thank you for that. And I know I love I actually love all the covers, and I really love the first pressing because it's Prince, and I love that focus. But at the same time, I love seeing Prince's name. And I really love the way that it looks on the US pressing. And this is going to be me getting like super nerdy, and only probably other designers will even know what I'm talking about. But there's something about the updated version of the first edition of the UK edition where the kerning is more print. I mean, not kerning, but the tracking, meaning Prince is tracked out more, and on like the new edition is pressed in a little bit more. And I really like that space between, even though it's larger. But anyway, that's just me kind of nerding out. And if there are any designers in the house, you'll understand what I mean by tracking and all that. But the one thing I do like about the first U.S. pressing is how large Prince is in terms of the name. And then the other thing that was really surprising at the time is that they would have selected a photo from the new tour, because the American audience, you would have thought they would have selected like Purple Rain or something like that. So I thought that was super cool.
Well, I did actually. I did have some involvement there. You've reminded me. I did say no Purple Rain photos. That was my because I mean, I don't want to walk into a bombshell and and a landmine and everybody start arguing over this. But I kind of felt at the top, particularly at the time, that there was this temptation to kind of reduce him just to Purple Rain. And there are so many covers and images, and a lot of the other books that are about Prince do have the Purple Rain iconography on the cover. And I just, part of this book was to say it's not focused on one particular era. It's his whole life. It's his whole career. And that's what I liked about the choice of the images. The reason for using one of the really early images to begin with was because this is almost before all the iconography started. It's him at the very beginning of his career. I think it's the first photo shoot he ever did, or one of the first photo shoots. I know there are probably earlier ones actually thinking about it, but certainly really early on, one of his first professional ones. And then with the nice thing about using they did say, okay, if we're not going with Purple Rain, what about these different eras? And they did, and the new tour is I think it's a really interesting sort of, I love those kind of images. I love all that iconography of that time. So there was a little bit of thought there, but they did come up with I can't take any credit for coming up with the pictures.
Yeah, and Mila says a fitting choice to add the subtitle to emphasize the music. I've seen quite a bit of people annoyed, disappointed that various Prince books aren't a tell-all of his personal life. And I mean, I'm personally not interested in tell-alls. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, and I don't think I've ever said this to you, Matt. But if I had to select one Prince book to take on a desert island, it would actually be your book.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yes. And the reason being is that you focus on the music, and you focus and this is one thing I want to talk about. I don't know how you did it, because Prince's career was so expansive, and you cover it from the beginning until the end. And now with the second edition, you do what I call post-Prince. And it's mind-boggling the amount of music Prince created in his lifetime. And you do such a wonderful job of covering a lot of it, and not just the hits. And another reason why I love your book is that before I met you, I knew you were a Prince fan just by reading the book, because you knew all about all the unreleased tracks. I mean, you knew about the live shows, all the after shows. I knew you weren't just some random author that was picked off the street to write a Prince book. Like, it comes through loud and clear that you are a Prince fan, like a real one that has seen shows.
Well, thank you, Jen. That means a lot. I mean, I really, that was the whole point of the book, was that it was written, by a fan for fans, that it was supposed to. But I wanted to also tell the stories that maybe fans would want to hear as well. So, I mean, it's not a tell-all, but I did interview the people that were really important to him. When I was sitting down with Susanna, say, I would be talking about their relationship, but in connection with the music, in connection with what he was feeling at the time, how these things came along. I'm not looking for, I love him as an artist. I think, he's one of the most important artists who ever lived, and if you get the opportunity to meet people who had lots of close contact with him, or in relationships with him, or worked with him for years and years, the questions I want to ask aren't any sort of, kind of gossipy or scurrilous questions. They're like trying to understand more about him, and more about his work, and more about his art. And the thing about being, like you're saying about the depth of it, I mean, I just felt early on that a lot of music books whether they're about Prince or anyone really, they sort of assume that they're only talking to people with a kind of passing interest in Prince. And I was thinking that I'm talking to people who've got, Prince fans have an extraordinary knowledge. I think more than any other musician, they know everything. But there's also, wanting to draw people in who don't know so much about Prince. And that was my experience was, I got into the music first, but then I would read stuff like, Pierre Nielsen's first book, or The Vault, just those books that went into really kind of encyclopedic detail. But I wanted to just tell the whole story, and I wanted, just to explain to people, not explain, but explain's the wrong word, because I'm not really explaining. I'm just sort of saying, look, it's out there. Look, there's this stuff. You thought this was really interesting, but he did that, 10 other things at the same time. And just that, a lot of people who aren't so much Prince fans sort of say to me, oh, I liked him at this period, or I liked him there. And then I realize it's just because they haven't heard a lot of stuff, and I make them a mix or play them some extra stuff. And then they're like, wow, when's this from? And then and I think, I don't know whether it's true in the same way in America, but the British press really started to go for him around sort of 93 to 95. There were lots of silly articles, lots of criticism. And I think a lot of listeners missed out on that era. So to be able to go back and go, look, within the Prince fraternity, people love that era. 93 to 95 is one of their all-time favorite eras. And this is why, because there's so much amazing stuff that was going on then, and just, I think a lot of the time people just couldn't keep up with him at the time. They just couldn't keep up with the amount of stuff that was coming out. And if there's anything I could do to kind of like record that, and the thing about writing the updated version, looking at those last few years of his life, he was doing so many things in so many different directions, whether it was the piano and microphone tour, whether it was working with Mono Neon and the Black is the New Black, whether it was the stuff he was doing with Andy Allo. He was like, as always, a firework going off in multiple directions. And any sort of attempt to form one narrative on it and say, this was going on, and this is what, he's always doing, and whether it's the Gemini in him, I'm a Gemini as well, but he's always doing two things in opposite directions at all times. You can never, or 10 things in opposite directions. You can never say that's the only thing that's going on. And that was the real challenge with the book, is like, how do you contain all that? How do you, put a form around that? And so essentially I sort of followed it chronologically, but stepped out of that sometimes. Like when I was talking about the proteges, for example, I gave them a section to themselves rather than folding them into the whole story.
So one thing I want to say, because Duane does watch, because this series is for Duane's book, which I absolutely love. But Duane, and rightfully, one of the reasons why I love Duane's book is that he takes 2 years, in this particular case, 83 and 84, 500 pages on just 2 years of Prince, and then, he has the second edition too, that is like the Parade and Sign of the Times era, which I'm going to continue to read. So like, I love like getting into the detail. I love I'm a liner notes junkie. So I really appreciate Duane's book. But the reason why I say that I would take yours is that it really is important for, I think, non-Prince fans to read your book, because they will understand how much music Prince created in his lifetime and how many albums he recorded and all the albums that are in the vault or songs that are in the vault. It is so important, and it's so rare to have a book that really tackles Prince's life in terms of not necessarily life, but really his discography from For You all the way through, and everything in between. It's just, I cannot thank you enough for writing this. I think it's really important. And I really appreciate that you've decided to actually do a second edition. Can you kind of talk a little bit about why you wanted to do a second edition, and also why now? Because you could have done it earlier, you could have waited a little bit later. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. But I should also say, I love Duane's work. He does an amazing job. But also it's such an expansive thing that he's doing that I think it's probably going to take decades for it all to, for him to cover everything. But that's part of the challenge that he set himself. But I'm a big fan of Duane's stuff. But yeah, no. So I mean, the reason why I didn't want to do it immediately afterwards, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I felt, you know, incredibly bereft after he died. It didn't feel right to do another edition or to do any, you know, I just, I mean, so basically, soon after he died, just to make sense of it for myself, I wanted to go back and look at the eras I hadn't covered, you know, to sort of go back and, well, for a while I couldn't listen to Prince at all. You know, it was just a period of, it was just, you know, too upsetting. But then once after that sort of period had passed, I started thinking, well, that last period is really not going to get much attention, because as soon as he passed, people suddenly started going back to the big it was always like, after any musician died, similarly with David Bowie, it's like, what are his greatest albums, what are his greatest songs, how do we remember this person, you know? And what gets lost is what happens at the very end of their career, particularly with someone like Prince, because what he was doing at the end of the career wasn't just one focused album like, say, David Bowie with Black Star. It was lots and lots of different things, that some of which never got finished, some of which probably sit in the vault, some of which just sort of stopped, just didn't happen. So I went through listening to as much as I could from that final tour and all the other recording. You know, it was a period where he was putting lots of stuff up in quite a transitory way. So stuff would appear and then it would disappear, you know, whether there would be a link and then it would be gone. So I felt like it was really important to record all of that. So that's what I did. And then I wrote this chapter, and I'm really, I mean, you know, I hope this doesn't come across as arrogant, but I'm really proud of this final postscript, because it feels like I'd kind of like reached a point in the book where I could write about him using all the knowledge that had come through from writing the rest of the book, but I wanted to wait till for the right time. So I wrote that, and I sort of sat on it and waited, because as I say, I didn't really feel like the time was right, and also I didn't know what else was going to come out, and I wanted to feel that things were starting to develop with the estate, and which I think they are now as well, you know. So I mean, obviously you've got the Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe, which I'm as excited as anyone else to hear and to read. You've written something for that as well, is that right?
Yes, I have a very small essay. Yes.
So I'm really looking forward to reading that. But I wanted to sort of, you know, I didn't feel, for a while, I wasn't sure what was happening. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, I thought Welcome to America was really interesting. I was really pleased that came out, and I wanted to write about that. I thought the Sign of the Times box set was amazing and wanted to write about that. So that's in there. But it was really just waiting to a point where it felt like, I mean, obviously, you know, when Diamonds and Pearls box set comes up, there'll be a temptation to write about that as well. And I think that will happen, you know, throughout, you know, the story is never going to be over, you know, brilliantly in a way. You know, things will constantly be released and there will constantly be reassessments. But this felt like a good point at which to take stock. And also, because, you know, people would contact me and they would say, what did you think of Hit and Run Phase 2, for example? And I think, well, I really want to communicate that. And that was the difference with the American book, actually, was because I hadn't written in the first edition about Third Eye Girl, you know, which was because that hadn't happened yet, and that was such an important part of his career. So, you know, so I basically wanted to be able to look at everything and sort of say, okay, well, this is still an ongoing story, and it will always be an ongoing story, and that's what's amazing. But maybe there's a point here where we can say, okay, well, this is what he released during his lifetime, and this is what he started to release after his lifetime. But it was really just that thing of wanting to write about, wanting to carefully go through and look at those last few months, those last few years, and look at what was going on and try and do justice to it, really. Because I don't think I didn't feel that anyone else was doing that. You know, there were lots of books coming out about Prince at the time, but they weren't, you know, they were all looking back at the golden era, or, you know, or the purple, you know, the most purple era, maybe, you know, the purple, yeah.
So actually I wanted to talk a little bit about, it sounds like, if I'm correct, you really didn't change anything from the first edition. And I also love that you did not change the tense. It's still in present tense. You did not change it to past tense, which I am grateful for. But I just want everyone to know who has the first edition, the main difference is this postscript chapter which is like 50 additional pages, and it's like 15,000 words, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
It depends. Sorry, go on.
no, I just want everybody to be clear. I don't want them to think that, like, especially if they have the first edition, that, some people can be disappointed by, updated editions or second editions.
No, absolutely. And the thing is, to go back, I mean, I don't think that story's over, because like with the Diamonds and Pearls box set and the other ones that have come out afterwards, that will all would have to be revised if it was. I mean, let me try and explain that better. So now we've got to decide whether we add the new stuff that comes out, whether we write about it after the end of the story, or whether we go back and try and fit it all in and try and make it all make sense and do it all chronologically. And with this book, partly the tense point, I didn't want to go back and say he did that. The life in it for me was a part of what this book was about initially was the excitement of following him through all this period, and I wanted to retain that. So it depends what edition that people have. So if you've got the first edition that came out in the UK, there's about 100 pages over the years that have added to it. But if you've got the American edition, it's 50 more pages and so on and so forth. But it was really just a case of me thinking, I don't want to go back and unpick everything and lose a lot of those impressions. I want to add to it. I want to add to what's there. I want to extend it. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, that was something that definitely does need to be made clear. This is extra additional material. It's not a reworking of the whole book. Yeah.
So I had a question about that, and I do want to talk a little bit about since I haven't had an opportunity to talk to you about your book, even though we've had conversations before. So I do have some questions, and I told you this before, and I'll say it. Everyone should know me by now. Christina says I have the UK edition. So yeah, I think you should definitely get the second edition for sure, Christina. And one of the things, the reason why I love your book is that you have opinions and about Prince, and many people should know I have opinions about Prince. We've been talking about that a lot on What Did Prince Do This Week. And sometimes I don't agree with your opinions, and I'm sure that sometimes you wouldn't agree with my opinions. But I'm curious, and I do want to talk about a couple in particular, but I'm curious, like, I know that since Prince has passed, my relationship to certain albums and songs have changed tremendously. And also because I do the academic symposiums, when I do those, I put those albums on repeat. And, I'm a much older person than when I was really, doing that, when those albums came out. So my relationship has changed drastically with some songs and albums. So I'm curious, has that same happened for you? And if so, why didn't you go back and change that in the book in terms of some of your opinions there?
It's funny. I was trying to explain this to a younger Prince fan who hadn't lived through it like we did, So, and they didn't understand. They were saying, well, why when Graffiti Bridge came out, did everyone freak out? Why did they think, it's it's a great album. Everybody who heard it at the time seemed to freak out and they seemed to be upset. And I was explaining that the reason was that every time a new Prince album came out at the time, you thought that was what he would be like from now on, right? You thought that, maybe that's just me, but but it was like, oh, he's this now. He's become something else. And it took quite a long time for us to realize, or certainly for me and my friends, in fact, similar fans, to realize that he's going to keep changing all the time. You don't have to worry. It's like, so some of the albums that I'm more critical of, for example, like Musicology, right? Which I think, because there's a few albums that I'm critical about, which I think everybody would be critical about. But Musicology, I think, is perhaps one where I step away from the consensus, right? So I think for a lot of people who heard Musicology, they thought that's a great album. It's a comeback album, particularly those who hadn't followed him through Rainbow Children in that period. They were just thinking, this is the Prince we love. He's back. At the time, it felt like we've just followed Prince through an incredibly experimental period a period where he was so close to his fans, where he was doing so much, there was forming such a link, and now he's gone back to being conventional, mainstream, kind of big stadium Prince, right? And so the worry then was, okay, well, that might be what he's going to do forever now, that he won't go back and do something. And then as soon as he did 3121 and it had some strangeness to it, and it was more, it was less accessible again, or more kind of innovative, or felt more innovative, then everything changed again. So it's that kind of, for me, it's that kind of thing of like, now we know, you can look back and go, oh, okay, he was doing this, but he was doing something different elsewhere at the same time. And you don't have to feel that kind of like, oh no, my favorite musician has maybe changed forever, and I'm not going to get back the musician that I had before. And also, like, later on in his career, as you'll know, he started to play a lot more stuff in his live shows than he did before. So it wasn't a case that like, I remember going to one of the shows at an after show at the Indigo when he played the big 21 Nights over here, and he played almost all of Chaos and Disorder, right? Having very, very rarely played that before, and you thought that was gone forever. I mean, the idea that Prince could possibly could return to those songs was extraordinary. And then later on, when he started to do that, and he started to sort of pick out from all, he felt, okay, well, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter that I like this album more than that album and the rest of it, because all of it's still alive in his imagination. He's going to go back to all of it. I don't know. And also the kind of like emotional and financial pressure he was under. So you could feel that like he really needed an album to work, or he really needed, and then later on he seemed to get more, sorry, I was just looking at the quote. Yeah, exactly. So he would sort of have this freedom again that he didn't necessarily, he thought that maybe was gone for good. So now it's much easier to go back and listen to an album and not feel that same sense of pressure on it. It's like, oh, I feel like listening to something really different tonight, and rather than my favorites. But also hearing some of those songs reinvented live really changes it as well. Like, I mean, I say in the book, one of the albums I struggled with was Raven to the Joy Fantastic. And then when he started playing those songs, some of those songs, like I Love You, But I Don't Trust You Anymore live, it was like, oh, wow. It was sort of, I didn't really get all of that at the time. And that kind of, that kind of reinvention that makes you go back to it. So yes, absolutely. They're always changing all the time. But I also felt when he was alive that I never fully understood the album that came out until the one after the next one. And then you go back and go, oh, I get it now. Because, so that's gone now, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I mean, I find myself listening to all different periods, but I don't go, I mean, at some point you've got to sort of say, when you're writing a book like this, I'm going to stop my opinion there, because otherwise, I'm just going to keep revising the book every week. It's sort of like it has.
That's really true. I mean, when you were talking, though, I mean, when I started listening to Prince, as a little person, I knew almost immediately that Prince was constantly changing. And also I was a David Bowie fan because, well, let me revert. My uncles were David Bowie fans. So I became a David Bowie fan. And I was actually lucky to work with David Bowie a couple of times on his website. And I got to meet him. And he's actually one of the reasons, that, to be honest, he's actually the reason that I left industry and came to academia, because when I worked with him, he gave me no feedback. He was like, I wouldn't want you to come in the studio, tell me what to do. So I'm not going to tell you. So he didn't ask me to change one font, one photo, no, nothing. He was fine. And then, so like, I would work with other musicians, because I was working with this company. We did a lot of musicians' websites. And, I actually quit when Avril Lavigne sent back to me on a napkin how she wanted her website to be. And I was like, paint by numbers. And I was like, David Bowie didn't tell me to change anything. So but like growing up, knowing about David Bowie being this chameleon, seeing that, through his album covers, hearing it when my uncles would play it. And then when I latched on to Prince, I could see that too in him. Every album cover was different. The font was different. He didn't have a quote unquote logo. Everything was different. And that's one of the things I loved about Prince, was that he was constantly and ever changing. So I do want to. There's so much I want to ask you, Matt, and I don't know if we'll be able to. I'll be able to ask you everything, but I'm going to try my darndest. So one of the things I love about the postscript, which you've already talked about, and which I think is really important, is that you do cover the piano and the microphone, like the final tour, and that really hasn't been talked about or documented properly. And I thought you did a really great job on that. But what I actually want to talk about, because I want to give people something to read, is the 2 reviews that you included of the Sign of Times box set, as well as Welcome to America, which is an album I think that should be talked about more, the Welcome to America album, because I thought it was really I mean, they did a really good job with the source material that they had. And as you say in the book, and I feel the same exact way, the Blu-ray is just really incredible. And yes, everybody, any Prince fan will tell you, oh, that isn't the best show Prince has ever done, but it is amazing because it just shows him. I mean, he just seemed like he was so happy in that show. And my favorite Prince song is Joy and Repetition. And so that he opens the show with Joy and Repetition, which is kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
I thought was like mind blowing. But one of the things that I wish, and I know we're aligned on this, the one thing I want before I die is one of Love Sexy box set. And more specifically, a Love Sexy after show box set. And with as many videos as possible that exist. And if we don't have the videos, then give me the audio. And another thing that I wish would happen around Welcome to America is because he did so many nights in LA and in New York and all of that. It's actually having more of a document of multiple shows so you can see how the set list would change and how the songs would change and morph. And I think one of the things that's missing from any new fan is that they will never get to see him live. So these, video documentation is as close as they're going to ever get to seeing Prince live. And so I'm really about, let's release all the live stuff. Let's and actually, have him perform, because I met someone at Celebration this year actually, and they thought that Prince was just a movie guitar. A movie musician, meaning that he didn't know how to play the guitar. It was just a prop. And I was like, really? Like, how is this possible? But I know that he's not the only one, this guy that I met. So can you talk a little bit about your love of Welcome to America and why you think it's important?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's a genuine missing part of the story, right? So I mean, as all Prince fans, thank you. That's a really nice message. One of the things that we all know as Prince fans is that there are some Prince projects. Well, I guess it's kind of I say we all know, but I guess it's a kind of area of debate, right? That what actually counts as finished albums and what sort of felt concepts. So, for example, one of the concepts I was always really interested in was that apparently there was an album that he started working on called Madrid to Chicago, where he finished 3 songs and then got the designer Steve Park to design a cover for it. And he said he did a kind of jazz font for it, and it just sounded really interesting. But as far as I'm aware, and from all the people I talked to, that didn't get any further than 3 songs, and then he abandoned the concept. And so there are loads and loads of those in the vault, and loads of those. Some of them bits have been released. But then there are other albums that are less controversial, and we know that he completed them. And maybe he would have played around with the track listing a little bit, but for whatever reason, they didn't come out. And it seemed to me that Welcome to America was probably, I mean, there may be other ones, this may come out later, but as far as I could tell, it was one of the ones that was absolutely closest to coming out. It was like the Black Album. It was pretty much ready to go. He was shopping it. He was trying to get a deal for it. And then for whatever reason, he didn't do it, and he pulled it, and it was put on the shelf. So, and it's a really important, it's a central part of his development. It's a central part of his story. That was, like there are other times where he might record 3 albums in a year and chose to put one out and didn't put the other ones out. There's a gap in his discography where Welcome to America came from, fits in rather. He did a Welcome to America tour. It was, he played the songs live. It was really just obvious it was supposed to come out. and we don't have it. So when it was released, that was amazing. This is a missing piece of the story that we're given. I think it's a really great album. I think it's really underrated. I think it's really interesting. That's a definite one that's a grower. The more you listen to it, it's quite a puzzling album. It's got it's pretty cryptic in lots of ways, but I do think it's a really important late work, and I think it will grow and grow. And I'm really grateful to have an official release of it. Similarly with the live, but as much as I love that album, just as you said, the live Blu-ray just blew me away. I just thought this is one of the best documents of a late live print show that we have. I'm always really upset we don't have more after shows. The only one we have is on officially. Well, I guess we have the Indigo Nights, but also there's the One Night Alone after show. But there aren't, any other live musician of his caliber has loads of live albums. It has loads of live DVDs. And I wonder whether when the people who run this state look at this, whether they're worried about putting stuff out that isn't, completely 100% ready to go. That maybe it's just, it wasn't filmed on as high definition camera as possible, or whatever it is. But we do know that he recorded loads of stuff. There probably isn't quite as much as fans would hope for, but there's definitely lots of sitting in that vault. There's loads of live recordings, both video and audio. And even if it's put out with a sort of proviso saying this isn't the best sound quality or this isn't the best visual quality, as far as I can see, there's nothing to be lost from putting that out. The fans would want it, new fans would come to it. It may not be it may not sell as much as a reissue, or it may not be as kind of culturally prominent, but it's more of a you've got to build that up. You've got to do a few of those. And that's the thing about Prince as a live artist, and where live recordings can be really important, is you look at a set list and go, oh, I wonder how he played that track, or oh, he did something really unusual that night, or there's a song I've never heard of. There are songs that he played at, as and I'm sure a lot of the fans know, there are songs he played at after shows that he wrote, played live, and were never recorded, and that was their only appearance was at one show. And now they're, apart from bootleg recordings, they're lost, and they may be lost forever. So it seems really important to me that's the part of history that's really missing. It's just some, just even a few. The putting out a Lovesexy box set with a load of after shows would be an absolutely amazing, incredible, extraordinary thing. But alongside that small club recording that everybody, within the Prince community is regarded as one of the best live shows, or live bootlegs ever, and also outside of it, and often it will be mentioned in magazines. It's not secret, and I think they've even pressed up copies of it in Europe, so it's there. It's ridiculous that isn't out, that the estate doesn't put that out, because what other artists could you have where everyone is agreed that this is the best quality live recording they ever did of an after show? It's an amazing work of art. I write about it in the book, and it just isn't available. That's just, it would be, even if they just took the bootleg recordings like Frank Zappa did, and did a sort of beat the boots and pressed it up and released it, that would be enough. But they've obviously got more stuff that they should be able to put out, because it's a part of history. It's a really important central. Anybody who's into Prince will at some point be told about the small club show, or played it, or hear it, it's just really, and I think that he would have wanted people to hear it. It's hard for me to imagine that he wouldn't want that to be out there in some form.
Indeed. And so the other thing that you talk about is the Sign of the Times box set. And so, I have mixed feelings about the Sign of the Times box set. And I've talked about this ad nauseum, but you haven't heard what I think about it, so I'll let you know. When I first got the box set, and I can't remember, I try to shield myself from the box sets until I get them. Like, I try not to read about them. I don't even look at the track listing. I just want to get this in. The same with the Diamonds and Pearls. I haven't listened to any of the tracks that have been released and all of that. And I was really excited because I love the Sign of the Times era in particular. And for me, it was the beginning of a new era with a new band, with Sheila and Levi and Bonnie, Miko, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like it was a making of Sign of the Times box set. And I know that a lot of those songs that were on there led up to Sign of the Times, but I really wish that some of those songs would have been on a parade box set. That's one thing. Even though, I know it led to Sign of the Times. I understand that, but I really wanted a line in the sand between the revolution and the new band, because the Sign of the Times era for me was all about the new band and the new era. That was one thing. The other thing, and I say this all the time, is I know there are some uber completists. I'm not an uber completist. I don't need edits. Just give me the longest version of the song. I want the 25-minute version. I don't need the edits. And I felt like a lot of the edits took up space where other songs, unreleased songs or live songs, could have gone. That's one thing. And then some of those remixes, like the Shep Pettibone mix in particular, I'm sorry, I did not need it. I wanted more songs or live from that, for Sign of the Times. Obviously, I love that it's released, and I'm not, some people say, you're being so negative. I'm not being negative. I bought 2 copies of the vinyl, 2 copies of the CD. I am still buying it no matter what I'm saying. So it always has been that way. And I also have mixed feelings about the Utrecht show, but I know in reading your book that you actually love the inclusion of the Utrecht show. But it's one of those things, it's like there's so many shows in a tour, and it gets really hard about which is the right one to select. And that's where I think sometimes you really need multiple ones, and like more than 2. like, like So talk to me about your feelings about the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe release.
Okay, the first thing is I'm in total agreement with you with a lot of what you're saying, particularly the 7-inch edits. I don't know who the 7-inch edits fans are, but they must be out there because they put them on everything. And it just, to me, it's just not interesting. I mean, I'd be quite intrigued to meet someone who just lives for those. I mean, those discs never get played by me. It's the same on the Purple Rain one. It's just, why do we need them? They're not in. I mean, Prince, when he did a 7-inch, I mean, somebody said to me, well, if I wanted 7-inch edits, I could just turn it down earlier. I know that's not exactly. I know some of them have slightly different versions or whatever, but I just, Prince for me is all about the long versions. I love the long versions, and absolutely, I don't understand why. I mean, I guess it's only kind of, as you say, for an uber completist, but it seems a weird kind of completist who wants like less good versions of things. In terms of the Utrecht show, I mean, obviously there are other brilliant shows at that time, and there are, and your point about it being all about the new band, I think, is really interesting. And that show that has come to be known as for those of you on Valium show, that they could have used that as a kind of starting point. That would have been really good. Yes, absolutely. But I just liked it because I don't really go to Sign of the Times as a live era that much. I like all the rehearsals, and I like, there's so much about it that I like. I mean, obviously it's either my favorite or second favorite Prince album, depending on how I feel about Love Sexy that week. But in terms of it as a live period, that it just was a nice way to go and listen to that. Because part of the reason I don't listen to it too much is because the songs are quite similar live to how they are on the album. So and the set list, I mean, although there were a few different things, it felt like he was sort of playing the album. So it's kind of less interesting to me than other eras, but it just felt like a really good thing to have. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are lots of other things that I would have wanted included on the box set. It's curious. I thought you were also going to say one of the things that I thought was interesting about the Sign of the Times box set, and also I think is probably true of the Diamonds and Pearls one as well, is the kind of using the songs that were written for proteges. And I don't really know how I feel about that. I mean, I'm glad to have them, and I'm sure they are part of the story. But the fact that they're there in between everything else, I don't know. It's that sort of thing of like, was Prince thinking in a different way when he wrote the protege songs? I'm glad to have them. I think that's all part of it and interesting. but it does make it slightly strange listen. So I wonder whether it would make sense to put the Protege songs on a different album or a different disc, or however you're doing it. But the Parade point, I think, is a really good one as well, because I'm pretty sure that they were holding back some songs for a Parade box set that weren't on the Sign of the Times box set. So that to me is quite interesting, that we don't get the full story. So I think had a Parade box set followed the Sign of the Times one, that might have made more sense. But instead we get some of the Revolution stuff that led up to Sign of the Times, but not all of it, because some of it's still being connected back to Parade. So it is a bit of a mismatch, and I mean, but at the same time, it's great to have as much of it as possible. But I totally agree. It would be nice to have more. There are weird things on there. Like, I say in the book, it's odd that they don't have. I know why they don't have the complete version of Crystal Ball, because it was on the Sony CD. But it's weird that it's not a complete story either. It's amazing. There's loads of really stuff in it, but it's exactly. Originals 2 version, I think, would be more, perhaps an easier way of doing that. I mean, as always with Prince, we have to put the pieces together, but I don't know whether that's the best way of doing it. But yeah, I would have loved to have had both more on the Sign of the Times box. I also know from talking to people involved in the manufacture that part of the reason that they stopped where they did was because there were too many vinyl. They thought about how big the vinyl would get, and it was getting to a point where it was going to be too big and too expensive for people. So I think that was the thinking behind it. But I would have thrown away the edits. I don't know. And there's just, as I say, there's clearly somebody there who thinks the edits are really important, but I don't know who they are, or who.
I don't know who they are. I don't know, because like one thing that's severely missing for me, because again, like I thought of it as the era was Madhouse, because Madhouse was the opening act for the Sign of the Times live, and I was like, you could have gotten rid of those edits, putting Madhouse on there. Madhouse live even better.
Yeah.
It really didn't make any sense to me. And I'm with Kim. Like I personally love the originals. But I really do. I'm kind of with Michael Dean. Michael Dean and I would love for them to re-release the Protege albums, like The Time and Vanity 6, with Prince, like remastered, and then with Prince's versions. That's like a double, triple thing. I think that would be really fantastic. So, Sign of the Times, I want to talk a little bit about a couple things you wrote in the book. One that I was just like elated to read, and knew that you were a kindred spirit. So when you talk about, I call it the volume show at First Avenue, when he introduces a new band, and you say that the highlight for you, and he said, but the highlight was the song he ditched, Strange Relationship, during which Prince seemed to be channeling Stevie Wonder. I absolutely love that version of Strange Relationship. I go on and on and on and on about that particular version, not any other versions, but that particular version of Strange Relationship. So I was excited when I read this. However, I wanted to talk to you specifically. No, I just like, I don't get the Stevie Wonder comparisons, and it might be because, let me make sure I say this carefully. I do not dislike Stevie Wonder. It's just that I don't listen to Stevie Wonder. Like, I know his hits. I don't even know if I have a Stevie Wonder album, and I know that's going to be blasphemous. And I know I went down several pegs for some people.
Not for me. I think I'm going to agree, but finish what you were going to say.
No. I just like, why did you say that Prince seemed to be channeling Stevie Wonder for this Strange Relationship version?
Okay, so I'm with you. I'm sort of with you on Stevie Wonder, while acknowledging, I say I'm agnostic on Stevie Wonder. I'm not a hater. But I don't love him in the same way that some people do. I know some people love him even more than Prince, or as much as Prince. And there was again, going back to those sort of O2 after shows, he would do a lot of Stevie Wonder covers there. And so he would play like 4 or 5, I mean, this is much later, different era, but he's playing lots of Stevie Wonder songs. And I'd never really heard, like when people have said Stevie Wonder, Prince, there's a connection, and it's obvious for me that they were incredibly connected. And hearing him play all of these live versions, they, he turned them into Prince songs in a way. So I think it was the memory of hearing him play Stevie Wonder songs later on that sounded very similar to that version of Strange Relationship. So it was sort of like, I know that Stevie Wonder is in there. I mean, he said, I think somewhere that Stevie Wonder was an influence. So I knew that he was in there, but I've never been able to hear it. And then I could just hear it in that song. And it was just something about the vocal arrangement, something about the way he was doing it. But I don't love it because it sounds like Stevie Wonder. I love it in spite of it sounding like Stevie Wonder, but it was just, I mean, it was just, I don't know. It was just like, that was the first time it kind of clicked to me. Like, because other people I know who are big Stevie Wonder fans, they go, oh, there's loads of Stevie Wonder in Prince. And I don't really hear it like the way I obviously do hear Sly and the Family Stone, that's there obviously, even before he kind of connected with Larry Graham. But with Stevie Wonder, I don't know, it just sort of I finally sort of heard it in that version. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's not quite right.
Yeah, so Eric is saying we need 70s Stevie Wonder in our lives for sure. And I knew someone's going to see Lee blasphemy on your Stevie Wonder comment.
Look, I didn't say I didn't like him. There are some amazing Stevie Wonder albums. I'm just saying I don't feel the same love for him that I do for Prince. Yeah.
I mean, and obviously I know he's an incredible musician. I mean, you can't deny that. And he has some incredible songs. And I'm going to be honest, it's just like you only have one lifetime. And I haven't even gotten through Prince's discography, every single album in a deep, deep, deep way. So how can I take on somebody else's catalog? It's not gonna happen. So I love Blade Brown's comment that it could be the clavinet in terms of that song. That's one thing. Okay, so this is where we definitely disagree, but I love that we disagree, but I disagree like very vehemently. And I'm going to read this. On page 200 of the US edition, one of the first releases to emerge from there was the film Sign of the Times, a strange hybrid of live concert recording, self-conscious reenactment, and dramatic movie that provides a somewhat unsatisfactory document of the era. Now, yes, clutch the pearls, Taja. For everybody who knows me, I actually never listened to the Sign of the Times album. I always listen to songs from the Sign of the Times live album. And for me, those are two totally different experiences. And to be honest, I was thinking about this morning. If I could boil it down to my top two favorite things that Prince has ever done is Under the Cherry Moon and Sign of the Times Live. And I always had these conversations with myself. If I could only take one to an island, which one would it be? And it was painful, but Under the Cherry Moon would have to go. It's all about Sign of the Times Live. Because Matt, like when it came out on VHS, I literally recorded it to a little cassette and I played that to death. I love the Sign of the Times Live. And yes, I know it's overdubbed. Yes, I know all of that. But that is my Sign of the Times. So when I read this, I clutched my pearls. I was like, of the era. So can you talk a little bit about why you wrote that?
All right. I'll take. There are two things I want to say. I don't know if you saw recently, there was somebody put it up on YouTube or it was circulating a version of Crystal Ball from that Sign of the Times show. So there was going to be, which was, I mean, that blew me away. That made me rethink it all. But I think for me, it was, and I'd wonder whether this would make your cut for your Desert Island. It was the Love Sexy Dortmund Live Sexy show, and having seen that live as well, that for me was the one that, I mean, I played that over and over again endlessly throughout. I mean, that would probably be the one that I would, if I had to take one document to a desert island, that would be the one for me. And I suppose Sign of the Times was always in the shadow of that for me slightly. I mean, I went to see Sign of the Times in the, well, I mean, there's another thing was that I saw it in the cinema because he cancelled all the tours in the UK. So there was initial disappointment from the beginning. It was like, this is what we get instead of a live show. but it was that, I don't know. I mean, maybe I mean, I have seen it a few times, and I've seen it on the big screen again. I do think it's a great film, but that kind of combination of the kind of slightly stilted quality, the being on the soundstage. And I know if I didn't know this, maybe I wouldn't think that, but in comparison to the Lovesexy show, where it's just so well filmed and so well recorded, and just, I mean, it just, I don't know, it just that's it. There was just something about it that, I mean, it's still amazing. You know what I mean? None of this is still up there for me, but it didn't quite have that same sort of I mean, again, it's a similar thing. So when I saw the Lovesexy tour, and then the film, the live recording, I hadn't heard a lot of those. I mean, I'd heard those songs, but like not. I didn't realize that he was still playing them. You know, like when he plays the Dirty Mind stuff. You know, it wasn't all the live album. You know, whereas with Sign of the Times, it's very much about the live album. It's a brilliant creation of Sign of the Times, but it wasn't a kind of recreation of all of his old stuff in that way. You know, it wasn't like he fit everything back together, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is just that knowledge, that awareness of knowing that the kind of weird way it came together, and it always felt a bit chilly to me, the sort of soundstage feel. I always sort of thought, where are this? It's a bit like, you know, like the oh, this will be blasphemy, but you know, like the concert sequences in Graffiti Bridge, where you just think, you know, like, where is this audience? You know, where is he playing? You know what I mean? And it's whoever he's managed to get to go in the audience, you know, who's gone out. It doesn't feel quite like a real Prince show where the audience is going absolutely crazy. It feels like they've been bussed in and it's a little bit cold. You know, I don't know. It just didn't really. I still like it, still watch it, but it doesn't quite capture the kind of crazy excitement of a Prince concert for me.
All right, so you have redeemed yourself with the Lovesexy Dortmund show. I also got to see that live 2 nights in a row, and it's my favorite concert that I saw live, bar none. In Atlanta, and obviously I wore the Dortmund show out. I mean, it's really spectacular. But I'm actually going to pull up, I had already pulled this up, Celie's quote, "The Forever in My Life, It live mashup and the Sign of the Times live."
That is great.
If I only had like 15 minutes to live and I knew I had 15 minutes to live, this is what I would want to see. And I've gotten into debates with my friends on whether or not he was performing emotion, you know, like when he kind of like bubbles over and does the eye thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was real or not. I felt it, you know, like it. I mean, it gets me every single time. That all right, you know, all right, like it gets me every single time. So it's like my prayer. I just really, really love that. Yes, Blake Brown, I'm with you. Seeing a Lovesexy show shot on millimeter film would have been absolutely amazing. So now I want to just transition really quickly, and we won't talk for very much longer because I know you have to go, even though I have a gazillion questions I want to ask you. I want to talk about originally I was going to ask you some questions about Diamonds and Pearls in terms of what you wrote originally. And I am going to read something to you, and I probably shouldn't, but I am.
Go for it.
So this is on page 276, and this is just, I'm going to say an aside first, and then I'm going to read something. I totally understood when you said Diamonds and Pearls was sickly sweet. I always called it saccharine, so I was with you there. I died laughing when I read Thunder is Christian heavy metal, but Strolling is actually one of my favorite songs. And we won't say what you wrote about there. We'll have people read that. Okay, so you say, most Prince records only improve over the years. Diamonds and Pearls is one of the rare exceptions, and for all its period charm, there is little to bring the listener back to it. So can you talk, has your opinion changed on that?
Well, I think the box set's going to completely change my vision of that. I mean, what I love some of the early versions of things, you know, and I'm really looking forward to hearing how they do that on the box set. But I mean, so what I felt at the time, and I still feel to a certain degree, although I think the box set is going to explode a lot of my thoughts on this, was that Prince was going in two really interesting directions at the same time. You know, one was that he was exploring jazz and becoming more interested in jazz, having sort of been slightly skeptical about it in the past. You know, this is not that long after he connected with Miles Davis, so that's, you know, that's there in the back of his head. And the other thing was his burgeoning relationship with hip hop, and which was perhaps a more kind of, you know, I'm not one of those people who hate all the hip hop stuff, and I love the I mean, you know, huge, not only just a huge hip hop fan, a huge Prince fan, but also don't mind Tony M and all that. You know, I like some of the, you know, I'm not as, you know, I'm not a hater on any of that. I think that that's great. I do agree that, you know, that potentially that he missed the opportunities to begin with to work with different rappers as he went. I mean, I agree about the album being disjointed. That's definitely something I feel too. So I felt like he was moving. Sure, I'll come back, but you can play the record too. That would be great, or the film version. But it felt like he was going in these two different directions, and I love some of the stuff, like Something Funky, This House Comes, and I love Get Off, obviously, and I'm not so keen on Cream. I mean, that's always been, and partly that's because I've heard it so many times live. But yeah, I think Disjointed is a good way of summing it up. It just sort of felt like it didn't cohere, and then like it was like taking something that didn't cohere and then putting a load of commercial stuff over the top of it, and then it working and it being a big hit. But again, it's that feeling of something was lost. It was the first time that I felt, because I like Graffiti Bridge, you know, I know other people didn't necessarily like it. I love the Batman soundtrack.
I loved it.
You know, it was all, and then suddenly this is something different, you know, and it's I mean, that's one of the things I'm really interested to hear the box set is to, you know, because he was clearly under a real struggle. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. He was serving a different audience, and he was really struggling to win back that kind of mainstream audience. And I played the album to death, you know, like everybody, you know, I mean, and I loved, I mean, and it was an album in those days, you know, it was like I played Insatiable, you know, I wouldn't play the whole album from beginning to end. I'd put the Insatiable side on, or I'd put the Get Off side on, but it didn't feel like a coherent record. Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody else, other people have said similar things. But as with all of this, when you hear what went into it, I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I'm in a way, I'm even more excited about the Diamonds and Pearls box set than I am about the Sign of the Times one, because I knew what was going to be on the Sign of the Times. There are a few surprises, but on the whole, I knew what was coming. With this one, I don't really know those other songs so much. I know some of the cover, you know, some of the what I know the other versions of the ones that were his originals. And there's a few songs on there that I've heard over the years, but there's quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't know, it's just something. Yeah, I mean, it just didn't work for me at the time. It felt like this was the beginning of sort of losing sight of what Prince was originally. But I think a lot, I think a lot of that is that this is where he stopped parceling out old songs. I mean, there are little bits, like on Walk Don't Talk, where there's a bit of Rebirth of the Flesh. But on the whole, this is all kind of recorded new. I mean, I know Love Sexy was too, but that seemed to fit more with what had come before. But this felt like, it's like, I mean, what I was saying earlier about people, feeling that he changed forever. Part of this was to do with the instruments. Like when you hear that album, like a lot of the stuff has gone into the warehouse and perhaps will never come out. I mean, that, when I was talking earlier about Raving to the Joy Fantastic, one of the things that Hans Martin Buff, who worked on it, told me was that was where, and it's in the book, that was where they went into the garage and they got out all the instruments that he'd worked on Sign of the Times and started fixing them. But at this point, it was like, oh, okay, that sound's gone now. This is the new stuff. And also the context, I mean, like thinking of it as a Prince album, obviously is very different to thinking about everything else that was out at the time and what that sounded like. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not an album that I hate. It's not in my worst albums. It's probably only just in my top 10 though. If that, it's probably just under my top 10, I think.
No, and I appreciate it. And the one thing that I want to just stress and point to people is that even though you are critical of the album, you're still looking forward to listening to the Super Deluxe box set,
Yeah,
because you can
absolutely,
be
absolutely.
critical and also still want to listen.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand why people don't understand that just because you're critical doesn't mean that you're still going to buy it or listen to it, and obviously respect Prince.
I mean, I always want to be proved wrong. I mean, all the opinions in the book, that was how I feel. That was, but there's always a possibility. I mean, not just, in the way, what does it matter if I'm proved right or wrong? But just in terms of like Prince fans, that it's great to have something where we just suddenly change it, that we have a perception of it. I mean, maybe part of it is also, I don't think I'm alone in this, was that it felt like this is Prince reaching for everyone else. A lot of people I know who aren't Prince fans love Diamonds and Pearls and no other. It's weird. It's almost, particularly for younger fans. I don't mean really young fans, but I mean like people in their late 30s or people in their 30s perhaps. Diamonds and Pearls is their Prince album. It's their equivalent of Purple Rain or Sign of the Times. So I have total respect for that. And if I hadn't heard all the other stuff, that would, I think. But it was the first time where I wasn't that excited about where he was going or what direction he was in. It felt like he'd stepped away for a bit from, and then of course, he comes back in and he's brilliant again.
Yeah, of course. So I have, if it's okay, I have 2 more questions. Is
Yeah,
that
of course.
okay?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So with the postscript, one thing that you wrote is that always a deeply spiritual person, Prince at one time espoused the belief that you shouldn't acknowledge death because if you do, it diminishes those who've passed. And I was wondering because one thing I want to say about your book, you're very similar to Duane, that you have really detailed endnotes, which I so appreciate, but you don't have an endnote for this. And the reason why I wanted to ask you about this is early on in Prince's career, death was all through, the films as well as some of the songs. And I never really, heard, or maybe I did, and I just it left my mental Rolodex. So where are you getting that at one time espoused? And when was he saying that, you shouldn't acknowledge death? Because I don't remember that particularly.
Yeah, I'm trying to, offhand, I don't remember the exact source, but it's either something he says on stage, maybe other people will remember. It's either something he says on stage or it's something he said to people he was working with. I think it was something he said on stage, that you shouldn't acknowledge. I think it was around the time of his son's death. I think that was when maybe he said it to Oprah or something like that. It was sometime around there. I think that was where he was being asked about that, and because that's right. I don't remember the exact quote, but it comes from that era, because that when he was talking, that's when he does the song "Come Back" on The Truth, where he's talking about how people come back. So yeah, that was the context there. But you're absolutely right. That's a good point. I hadn't really thought so much about that, because certainly in it's in the book about Under the Cherry Moon, that people didn't want him to be spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched Under the Cherry Moon, but people didn't want him to die at the end, and that was something that he really and then he had a big conversation with I think it was Chris Moon, or certainly one of the people, or maybe Alan Lee, certainly one of the people around him, where they were saying, well, why are you killing yourself off? And that he felt that it was a persona of his that had to be killed off. So yeah, that's a good point. Certainly death was a part of his earlier creative makeup, and and also the killing off Prince, the death of Prince, when he became a changed his name to a symbol, and
it's a recurring theme. I mean, even like in controversies, people want to die so they can be free. I mean, it's just that's actually one of the reasons why the first thing that drew me to Prince was the theme of freedom. As a little person looking at the Dirty Mind cover, the way he was dressed, even before hearing the album, I knew this is a guy who did whatever he wanted. No, he didn't listen to anybody. But the second thing, I'm sort of obsessed with time, and I don't know where it came from. I'm very obsessed with time. And I think one of the things that really also drew me to Prince was this idea that tomorrow's not promised.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, the whole 1999 theme, and you know, just like, you know, it's just around the corner. He wasn't talking about death, but like, you know, so it's I don't know. It just I was just curious about that. So thank you so much, and I'm hoping that somebody in the chat would have come through. If you know, someone tell us, where does Prince talk about that you shouldn't acknowledge death? Can anyone give us like anything specific? Is it on the Oprah show where he did the interview with Maite? Okay, so my other question, it's actually not a question. It's just, this is, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to read this. I burst into tears when I read this, so I'm going to try to compose myself. Okay. He isn't the only musician whose fans followed him around the world, but he was the one who gave people the greatest reason to keep going. Once you've had the Prince live experience, you wanted it again and again. So I just wanted to thank you for writing that. As you can tell, it really touched me when I read it, and it still does. So thank you for that.
No, I mean,
go ahead.
No, I mean, you know, it moves me too. I mean, you know, I mean, he, as I said, you know, he did give us everything, you know, and I really, you know, I just don't know anyone else who did that. You know, it's sort of, it's, you know, when you think about who's the really, I mean, obviously he had important relationships in his life, but his relationship with his fans was second to none. You know, I mean, it was extraordinary. Even just thinking about like physically and emotionally, what he, you know, just what he put his body through, what he put his mind through, what he, you know, what he did to just constantly keep, you know, people, fans happy, and you know, we're not even happy, you know, he's happy to annoy us as well, and to push us away, and to, you know, and to you know, tell us that we're being too intense, and then welcome us back. You know, it was just an incredible relationship, and I don't think any other musicians got that. You know, you don't really, he had a kind of, there was a kind of, I mean, it's a cliche, but, you know, kind of layer of skin missing, you know, that kind of like, he was raw and sensitive, and his emotions were always there at the surface. And I think, you know, that's why people responded to him as they did. That's why we respond to him as they do.
Yes. So thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person who, you know, would be in tears when he starts playing, you know, or when he plays a certain song. I mean, the one for me that really did it, and I mentioned it in the book, was being at an after show and him coming in and playing Empty Room, which, you know, is a song I've always loved, and it's a fan favorite, but it was just extraordinary that night. You know, it just felt like, but it was the different, I just couldn't, you know, he'd just done a massive show. He'd played all the hits. He'd had 20,000 people eating out the palm of his hand. And then he goes into another room with 1,000 or 2,000 people at most. And he just starts playing Empty Room. And it was just the knowledge that he knows everybody here wants to hear that. He knows that everybody understands it. He knows it wouldn't possibly have made sense on the main stage. And he makes, you know, it's a song that has been, you know, that he wrote about a relationship a long time ago, and he makes it sound like it's just, you know, happened to him. And it was all, but also there was a connection between the fans and him. You know, there was this kind of, the only other time, I mean, sorry, I'll go, but the only other time that I felt, I mean, often I would, you know, be in tears at a show or be incredibly moved, but when he brought Amy Winehouse out on stage as well, that was just such, I mean, particularly knowing now what we didn't know at the time, you know, it was just, he was clearly saying to the audience, you know, you have to look after her, you know, you're failing her. But I didn't realize, you know, he's also sort of saying you're failing me a bit as well at the same time. You know, it was like, it was, because you're thinking, okay, these appear to be very different people, but they love each other as, even though they're just coming together for a moment, they're seeing each other as artists. And just the emotional power, you know, some of those shows were just, well, you know, many of his live shows, but just sometimes he would just take you completely by surprise, and just the raw emotion. And yeah, I mean, it was, you know, I mean, it was devastating when he died, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And if you must go up and pick up the second edition of Matt Thorne's book, Prince. And actually, let me make sure I have the right cover, because that's a different one. Hold on. Let me see. I have so many covers. Let me see where it is.
No.
No. There we go. Yeah, there it is. There's so many versions, and if you're like me, you want to collect all the versions. Yes. So, thank you so much, Matt, for being with us, taking time out of your Saturday to talk to us about your book, and for all the time that you've put into researching your books and, doing this update, which I think was really critical, to cover, Hit and Run Phase, 2, and the Piano on the Mic tour, and Welcome to America, and the Sometimes box sets, and all of that. It's so important to keep Prince's name on the lips of the children, as I say, and you're doing the work. So we really appreciate you, Matt, so much.
Well, thank you very much, D'Angela, for having me on your show. I mean, this is an amazing show. I love the fact of just that you're doing this, that you're doing it week by week and keeping him in everyone's memory. And just anytime you want me to come back, I'm more than happy to do so.
Awesome! I'm so excited. Well, have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye, everybody.
Stage. All right. Thank you to Matt Thorne for joining us. And I'm going to continue with what did Prince do this week? So just give me 1 second to move forward in my slide deck. Thank you for hanging out with me. It's a rainy day in New York, and I miss Michael Dean, but the show must go on. So week 40 of What Did Prince Do This Week? And there's only one studio visit. And I was like, I almost didn't even put this in here, but he did go to the warehouse to review a 24-track recording of The Bird and Jungle Love, and from the First Avenue show the previous night. But I also wanted to show the September calendar, because you know what I'm going to say, I don't believe this, that Prince only went to the studio once this week, but maybe he's tired, because he was in the studio 21 days in a row for a lot of Purple Rain, basic tracking and overdubs and mixing and whatnot. So it's possible. So I just wanted to say that. So before we get started, I wanted to play like a little clip. I'm not going to play the entire thing but I just gotta play this.
Y'all had to excuse me. I was going to mention this earlier, but I forgot. I'm not above that. But what we're going to do right here, right now, no, not yet, just relax. It's my show.
All right, so if you don't know what that is, it's a little snippet from the First Avenue show on Tuesday, October 4th of the time, where The Bird and Jungle Love was recorded live in concert. By the time The Bird would essentially go on Ice Cream Castle with the live version of The Bird with some overdubs, and then you'd have a re-recording of Jungle Love. So we know some people know what's going on, yes, but others might not. So one thing that I really loved about Celebration 2019 is that they actually showed the video of that First Avenue performance, which was incredible to see. I had always heard the audio, but never saw the video. So that was one of the highlights from 2019, as well as the one and only Jesse Johnson being in person and playing live. So I want to take the time to read what Duane wrote about The Bird and Jungle Love on October 4th. But before I do, I want to read a little bit from the beginning of the chapter on page 189. So, no, I don't want to do that. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. So, this is from Mark Cardenas, which is actually one of the keyboardists that replaced Jam and Lewis in the lineup of the time that performed at First Avenue on October 4th. And this is a quote from him. And actually, Mark Cardenas would go on to join Jesse Johnson's review, just FYI. When Prince came to the rehearsal space, everybody clammed up and shut down and just kind of, oh, Prince is here, kind of thing. Occasionally, depending on what kind of mood he was in, he would hear us. He would laugh and then maybe change a couple of parts and fine-tune a few things. He was excited about the sound. Likely inspired by the success of Prince's show on August 3rd, which previewed multiple tracks for the Purple Rain album, it was decided to have the Time debut their new tracks that were also premiering in the movie. This would give the band a chance to work out the kinks with new members, Paul Peterson, Rocky Harris, which was on bass, and Paul Peterson, again, for the newbies, because Michael Dean says we need to talk to the newbies. Paul Peterson, who had become rechristened as St. Paul by Prince, was one of the keyboardists that came into the Time. He's also on the cover of Ice Cream Castle. He would go on to The Family and a solo career. So he took over one of the keyboard spots. And then Rocky Harris was on bass. And Rocky Harris wasn't in the band for very long, I think like 3 weeks. And I think he got fired. I don't know that for sure. I think he showed up late or something for the Purple Rain film shoots. He wasn't in the band for very long. And then Mark Cardenas, who were replacing Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, and Monte Moyer. And would also allow director Albert Magnoli the opportunity to observe the band in front of a live audience at First Avenue. If I'm preparing to shoot them in a movie, I need to see them in their own element, Albert Magnoli says. I got to see Prince in his own element, and if the band is being shot for a motion picture, I need to see how do they act on stage. That's the authenticity that I want to be able to convey. So yes, Web Diva, this is definitely Vanessa when Morris goes off and says, yep, you took that you give, indeed. And Rocky Harris eventually went with Jesse and Jesse's band as well. All right, so in the book, Duane writes, Tuesday, October 4th, The Bird live in concert, Jungle Love live in concert, venue, First Avenue, capacity 1,558, attendance unknown, artists the time, engineers David Leonard and possibly Susan Rogers and Peggy McCreary. This quote is from Morris Day. Prince helped us form the blueprint, but it was getting crazy for me. With every step of success, he became more difficult, he being Prince, and I was getting the brunt of it. We are not hating on him. We are just telling the story. If it sounds ugly, then it was ugly. We are just telling what happened. This is Duane writing. The new lineup for the Time performed an 8-song set at First Avenue in Minneapolis, including the premiere of the 2 tracks planned for the upcoming movie The Bird and Jungle Love. For the crowd, this was a chance to catch a rare hometown performance by the band, and they weren't let down. The reaction to both songs were overwhelmingly positive, and the concert gave the band the chance to introduce the dance moves to the Bird as a rehearsal for their scene in Purple Rain. According to Day, the roots of his moves came from his childhood. It's really a takeoff of the old pterodactyl from the Flintstones, if you remember that. I remember the Flintstones, do you? That was more like arms, extends his arms and flapping the hands, while the Bird is more like you get the wings going. It's just a modernized version of that with some funk behind it. The live version of The Bird was very similar to the previously recorded studio version. Remember, we talked about the previous studio version, but in concert, the band altered the Star Spangled Banner riff at 5 minutes and 21 seconds, which can be heard on the Ice Cream Castle album, as Day shouts, "Fellas, what's the word? When you want to get some, what do? Do the bird." So for some reason, the riff was cut in half and can be heard soon after the guitar solo on the album version. What's great about the time is that they are literally the polar opposite of Prince, and so that strengthened the thematic area, observes Magnoli. To me, it's a peacock against a black swan, right? Black swan, Prince, peacock, pretty feathers, Morris Day, and because they're so opposite each other, you have drama. Now, this is actually a really important quote from Magnoli, and a bit of smoke and mirrors at the time, because up until Under the Cherry Moon and actually figuring out Prince's voices, like the distinction between Prince's voice and Morris's voice in real time, because I was a teenager and a very young teenager at that. I was like 12, 13, 14, listening to, like Tricky and those songs. At first, I just thought it was Morris, and I thought that Morris was the opposite of Prince. But, now in hindsight, and particularly when Under the Cherry Moon came out, it was super clear that Prince was just as funny as Morris. And I had the opportunity to ask Jesse Johnson, like, who was funnier, and he said he couldn't call it because they were both hilarious. So the Purple Rain film really shaped this narrative that Prince was like this serious, brooding character, and that Morris Day was the foil, was the fool, was the comedian, when in fact, Prince was just as funny and could be the fool, the foil, just as Morris could. So that was a construction and for the film. And sometimes, Prince played into that when he didn't give interviews and stuff like that. But I really loved it when Prince allowed his humor, when he began to start sharing his humor with us. That was really, really special. And I'm not going to read. I'm going to read the second paragraph on page 182. I'm going to skip the first one, which talks about Morris being unhappy. But I'm going to start with the frustration regarding how much money the town was making boiled over during the show when Day openly mocked Prince about the fact that he charged $25 for a ticket to his August show. I couldn't afford it, so I stayed home. Day played the part of a revival preacher looking for donations with Prince, "Are you out there? Did you give? You took? Did you give?" It obviously struck a chord because days later, when Prince was teaching the Revolution some of the songs he'd recently recorded, he was still making references to Day's quote. In fact, he would revisit this phrase when creating The Family, the band that would eventually replace the time after they self-destructed. By the end of the concert, Day's patience had run out. Patience. I was production manager for that show, and at the side of the stage when it concluded to escort the band to the dressing room, recalls Alan Leeds. Instead, Morris unexpectedly bolted to the door behind the stage, which leads into a private garage where his car was parked. He did not utter one word before getting in the car and driving off, still in his stage clothes. Even the band was stunned, looking for him to celebrate the well-received performance. From outside the venue in the truck, a basic 24-track recording was made of the concert for the two new songs, and the live versions of both tracks were being considered for use on the Times' next album. Jungle Love and The Bird had already been recorded in the studio, so as he had done with the songs performed live with the Revolution at the benefit show in August, Prince would have to decide which versions of these tracks worked best for the album and the movie. The music sounded incredible and the performance went very well, but the bigger question was, could Prince keep the time together long enough to finish the movie and any remaining tracks for an album, or would Day quit and join Vanity as a former employee? And status is tonight's live performance of The Bird, 7 minutes and 28 seconds, was overdubbed in the studio. And an edited version, 7 minutes and 3 seconds, was released on the Times Ice Cream Castle album. The 32-second introduction to the song was kept intact for the album, but drastically condensed for the movie. The live rendition of Jungle Love, 4 minutes and 10 seconds, was not released on the album. The studio version was chosen instead. Like The Bird, the audio from Jungle Love was featured in the movie, with the band lip-syncing their performances from this evening. Nothing else was officially released from this concert, which would be the only show featuring this lineup of the time. Rocky Harris would be replaced by Jerry Hubbard, who also, I think, went to Jesse Johnson's review, while the movie was being filmed in November. And in italics, it says Prince would recycle Morris Day's biting phrase on March 3rd, 1986, 3 years later, well, a little less than 3 years later, during a show at First Avenue when he was upset with Paul Peterson for leaving the family. Paul Peterson, you out there, did you give? You took, did you give? Followed by the chant, St. Paul, Punk of the Month. Now, what's really great about St. Paul is that I guess, time heals all things, and he's embraced Punk of the Month. I was able to buy a Punk of the Month button from him, which I thought was just hilarious that he just, chalked it up to humor. But I lost my pin, and I'm so bummed that I lost my Punk of the Month pin. So it is somewhere on New York streets, which I'm not very excited about. And then I love Celie's quote. Yes, the question becomes, how long did it take for fans to realize that Prince was Jamie Starr, to have a full understanding of Prince's personality? And I love this comment from Sakari. On a whim yesterday, I revisited some of Prince's tweets from years ago. He was definitely a comedian. Now, what I want to do now is we have another book that we can reference, a really important book, in my personal opinion, from the Morris E. Day, On Time, A Princely Life in Funk, co-written by David Ritz. And if you have your books handy, your bookshelf handy, I'm going to go to page 90 and read a couple of pages from this. But actually, I want to start off with just a little snippet from page 94. Now, Morris's book, I've said, I'm going to keep saying this. I'm sending bat signals out to the universe. I'm going to keep saying this until someone who knows someone tells Morris that he needs to read his own audiobook. I mean, they just need to re-release it with Morris reading it. I think hopefully he does us an updated edition or a second version. I think that would be just incredible. But I find that Morris's book isn't long enough for me. He sort of glosses over his own solo career. He talks about his solo career, but not to the lengths that I would have wanted. And while he did give us a lot of information, I really wish that he would have went into some more detail. And one of the areas that I really wish he would have is for this particular show. So, preparing for the show, I was like, let me reread Morris's book and see what he has to say about this, I think, pretty important show in the Times concert discography, this, October First Avenue show. And this is what Morris writes in his book on page 94 about it. The two songs for the film were breakout hits, Jungle Love and The Bird, My Weird Invention. And you'll understand that when I read the previous pages. The single for The Bird was a live version we'd done at First Avenue just before filming Purple Rain. That's it. That's all he says. He says the single for The Bird was a live version we'd done at First Avenue just before filming Purple Rain. And then he does go on to write with the assistance of David Ritz. It's unusual that a live recording becomes a single. Stevie Wonder had done it with Fingertips. Stevie Wonder is coming back in our conversation 20 years earlier with Fingertips, a song that kicked off his monumental career. I guess we were hoping for the same thing. Listening to the live version, we knew it couldn't be improved upon. So that's page 94. Now I want to go to page 90, where he talks about the jungle, love, and the bird a little bit in depth. Not as in depth as I would want, but in depth. Okay. Jungle Love was Prince's notion of uninhibited hot sex. The groove originated with Jesse Johnson's killer guitar line, I put my own hurtin' on it, and the thing started sizzling like fresh meat on the grill, a tasty dish that still tastes good today. The bird was born out of a strange conflict. On stage, I'd come up with a move to groove where I was flapping my arms. Prince got pissed. He thought I was mocking a dance move he made. I wasn't. I was actually modifying that dance move from the cartoon I mentioned earlier, the Flintstones. Prince said, stop. I asked why. You making me look bad, he insisted. I insisted. He was paranoid, so I kept on doing what I was doing. I realized I was doing a new kind of dance. Now, coming up with a dance craze ain't exactly nothing new. Chubby Checker had his twists. There was the shimmy, the swim, and the locomotion. And one song alone, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, James Brown gives a shout out to the jerk, the fly, the monkey, and my favorite, the mashed potato. At some point, Prince did a boomerang. Yes, there were times where he reversed himself and changed up an attitude. He was a Gemini. Once Prince saw the audience eating up our stage moves, he decided to name it rather than fight it. He called it the bird, saying, Morris, you win. Do this bird to death. I think the thing's gonna fly. That's Prince. The thing flew to number one. I love that. Although the songs were huge, Prince made a point of not including them on the Purple Rain soundtrack, which wound up selling over 25 million copies. Because I'm a writer on both Jungle Love and The Bird, if Prince had kept them on the soundtrack, I would have made a whole lot more than my $50,000 actor's fee. $50,000 actor's fee. Given their importance in the film, there's no reason why they shouldn't have been on the soundtrack. It's hard to argue that other filler songs that made the soundtrack are better jams or more seminal to the story than the ones played by the time. The world knows that when Prince sang Let's Go Crazy in Purple Rain, he rose to a new level. But part of what spurred him on was the heat we provided with Jungle Love and The Bird. Sure, he outdid us, but we also outdid ourselves. We deserve to be on that soundtrack. And this is Ghost Prince. And for those of you who don't know, you haven't read Morris's book, he basically has parts of the book where he writes as if Prince was speaking to him. And I won't get into it. I'm totally fine with Ghost Prince. Some people don't like it, but I love it. So this is Ghost Prince. I had a dozen other songs I could have put on that soundtrack, songs I'd written by myself. It was a Prince and the Revolution soundtrack, not a soundtrack of the time. And then Morris says, you got your BS arguments, I got mine. You had your power, I had none. You had the skill to scrabble up elements of your life into a great movie, the way you incorporated those musical extensions of yourself. I love that. I don't know, again, if this is Morris or if this is David Ritz, but I love those musical extensions of Prince. The Revolution, Apollonia 6 and The Time, and had them working against you and for you is another testimony to your genius. And then he follows up with Ghost Prince, and Ghost Prince says, you keep kissing my, and then kicking my. And then Morris says, doing neither, just setting out the story like I see it. So again, because this is a book club, if you haven't read Morris's book, definitely pick it up. It's worth the read. Like I said, I just wish it was longer. All right. So, yes, so Sakari's with me. Sakari says, yes, please. I listened to just a few seconds of the audiobook expecting Morris's voice, and it was strange. Wasn't it strange not to hear it? It would have been so funny to hear Morris's Prince impressions. I so agree. And then Celie says, thank goodness that Paul came to terms with the disc, because while I played dozens as a youth and understand the competition, I feel bad for Paul whenever I hear it, though I like the chant groove. I just like, I bought that pen from St. Paul directly in 2019, March of 2019, right when we were about to go into COVID. So I remember that very clearly. And I was just, that just like endeared me to St. Paul even more, just how gracious he was and how he just like, took it back and, he just, laughs about it now, which is really fantastic. He didn't hold a grudge, which I think is really great. And Vanessa also loves Ghost Prince too. He was raw and uncut, speaking the truth. I thought it was amazing that Morris captured his voice. And, I said this before, my best friend passed, and I've had so many conversations with my best friend that I actually, towards the end of his life, we spoke less and less. And the reason why we spoke less and less is I would literally have conversations with him in my head because I knew what he was going to say. And I'm sure that Morris has had so many conversations with Prince in his lifetime that he would have a general idea of how Prince would respond. So I'm totally fine with Ghost Prince. And I love this, Celie. Celie says, Morris presents Prince like a hint, like Toni Morrison does in Beloved. I'm a little tongue twisted. All right. So Wednesday, October 5th, 1983, The Warehouse. And we are going to go to page, and it's very, very short read, page 183. So let me get there to my books. 183. So it says, it is likely, this is Duane writing, it is likely that Prince spent part of the day reviewing the 24-track recording of the previous night's show at the warehouse in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. Engineer unknown. So Reggie B, thank you so much for sharing this. So Reggie B says, honestly, from knowing Morris a little bit, he always says he does not like work, and it feels like work. He's over it. So I can see why his book is short and he didn't do the voiceover for the audiobook. That is that makes so much sense. Thank you for that. But we still want the audiobook in Morris's voice. Like, who wouldn't want to hear Morris read his own book? All right. So we're going to go to Wednesday, which is October 5th, Sunset Sound Studio 1, not 3. And this session takes place over 3.5 hours. And Prince is not in attendance. And engineer Peggy Mack is. And we're going to go to, that's wrong. No, that's right. Go to page 183, but we're going to move over to 184. And it's also a very brief read. So I'm going to read that with the quickness. 2-track copies were created during this brief session of Studio One and shipped to Minneapolis. Prince would use the tapes to help create the moves during these songs, as well as the other live tracks they'd be performing during the movie. October would be spent perfecting the stage choreography for all of the groups, and the songs, if you didn't see them on the slide, were Purple Rain, The Beautiful Ones, and I Would Die for You. All right, so we're going to go over a little bit today, and I'm not going to go through this, but I want to get to a purple word about the purple world. There's a lot going on, and I have to say a word about this incredible show that Princess did on Saturday, last Saturday in New York City. No, we didn't get Wendy and Lisa like LA did, but it was an incredible show. And on the weekly playlist, I have uploaded, I personally haven't uploaded, but I put in the, from the internet, I put in the, our playlist, some of the video from the show. And if you only watch one video from that Princess show, definitely watch Cool. It's like a medley, and they put like all these TV tunes throughout Cool. It was such a great show. It was my favorite. They've become like my favorite band to see a non-Prince person perform Prince songs. It was really phenomenal. And then also in the playlist, there is another clip from 2012 when Princess performed, so you can compare and contrast them from a little over 10 years ago. Yes, Tanja, I'm glad to hear that somebody else loved Princess. They were incredible. I thought they did an amazing job. So that's one thing. And then I just wanted to hear from you guys in the chat. Did anybody make it to the Under the Cherry Moon screening in Inglewood on September 30th? And if so, did you hear something that we should know about? Like, did Jerome say anything that we should know about? Anything like that? That would be really great. So tell us if you went to the Under the Cherry Moon screening. I really wish I could have gone, but I'm not rolling in the dough. And then I also want to know if anybody went to the Morris Day exclusive Vegas experience, and if so, any insights or anything you'd like to share with us. Yes, Vanessa, that would be so fantastic for Chris Robb to do some music with Princess. I think that would be explosive. So give us some reports if you went to either the Inglewood Under Cherry Moon screening or the Vegas Morris Day and the Time show. I want to know. Want to continue to promote and support Mentor Newark with their fantastic Rich Benson collection. It's going to be open until October 31st. We talked to Jesse Jenkins, who is mentoring the teenagers who curated this show, and hopefully I'll get some more information on when they're open and so forth. I have on my Record Day shirt because I am excited. I am not one of the lucky people who have an original of this. So I'm excited that this is coming out for Record Day. And I'm excited because it's Get Off, which is what I love. And also it's on my grandfather's birthday. And my birthday is the day before. So this is like my birthday present for me and my granddaddy, because I always celebrated my grandfather's birthday when he was here. He's gone on now, but so I always celebrate 23rd and 24th for my grandfather. So I am excited. Are you guys excited about this Record Day release? Let me know in the chat. I am excited. Okay. All right. So Zakia's saying didn't go, but Morris had Maite open dancing to the song 7. It's on Instagram. Thank you so much, Zakia. I'm not on social media a lot. I just post stuff for what did Prince do this week and the symposia, and I look at it a little bit because work has been crazy lately, and I just haven't had time to be on social media a lot. So another thing I want to talk about is Kirsty Fairclough and Mike Allain, who did the very first Prince conference in Manchester, is actually doing another Prince conference in Minneapolis. I am not involved, so I'm promoting their conference. I'm not affiliated. They are presenting Prince on Screen, Images and Ideology in June of next year around celebration time. And there's a call for proposals, and their deadline is November 15th. And proposals are invited for 15-minute papers, but not limited to the following areas: Prince and performance style on screen, Prince's music videos, Prince and fashion on screen, Prince as star celebrity in television interviews, Prince and media representations on screen, Prince in film, including writing, acting, and directing, Prince and his collaborators on screen. Again, submission deadline is November 15th, and decision date is December 15th. And the state of Prince Rogers Nelson is not affiliated, associated, or connected with the Prince on Screen Images and Ideology Conference. And again, this is not my conference. This is Mike and Kirsty and Crystal Wise and Christian Schlumner. I want everyone to be aware of that. I'm so excited, Kim, that at least you're excited. Thank you. Thank you so much, Man Ray. It's because it's a jury day today. And so I'm not getting the natural light. So I actually have artificial light sort of blasting. So it's changing the light up. Oh, so Drea's Nana's birthday was November 25th. So I'll have to pick that up. Exactly. All right. So next up is we're on our countdown, 21 days and counting to can't wait. This is going to be the longest 21 days ever. Now, Paisley Park is doing the official Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe album release party on Friday, October 27th in Chanhassen at Paisley Park. I really wish I could go. I can't go because we're having a conference that I am actually hosting and have been organizing for work. So I'm going to have to stay in New York, but who in the chat is going to the official Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe album release party? I want to know. So if you haven't seen this, I'm going to read a little bit of the event details. It's going to start with a screening and end with a party. And in their own words, the evening will begin with a panel discussion featuring members of the new power generation. Following the panel discussion will be a screening of the previously unreleased live at Glam Slam January 11, 1992 concert footage. But if you went to Celebration the previous year, you got to see this live on the big screen at Paisley Park, which is probably, it's going to be really hard to top. You know, hearing the MPG live, seeing Prince at that Glam Slam show, and how they did that was incredible. It's like something we will probably never be able to experience again. So I can't wait for the Blu-ray. You guys know me. I'm ready for the Blu-ray. I really wish I could go to Paisley Park for this party so I could hear it again on Paisley Park's speakers, and because I love the sound in Paisley Park. There's nothing like the sound in Paisley Park. And like earlier when I was talking to Matt Thorne, I did go to the Welcome to America release party, and when they played the Blu-ray, and I hadn't seen it before, I waited until the release party, and hearing the Welcome to America concert on Paisley Park speakers, incredible, nothing like it. So if you're able to, I would highly suggest that you try to get to Paisley Park if you can, and if your wallets permit you to hear it and see it in Paisley Park. I really wish that I could, but I can't. Yes, Tanja, that show was fire, 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 fire. So yes. Yes, Leah, I'm with you. I'm so over waiting for this DMP Deluxe. I keep checking magazine racks for new Prince articles, and there's nothing. I need something to keep me going until then. Well, you got What Did Prince Do This Week? So we try to keep the community together as best that we can. And yes, Vanessa, it was a jaw-dropping performance. I got misty-eyed. It was like Prince was there. Yeah, it was like Prince was there instructing his band. And he was having so much fun, you know, jumping on the bar and all sorts of crazy stuff. Really fantastic. All right. And I'm just going to keep looking at this until I get it in my hands. Like, I can't wait for this box set. Cannot wait. And the CD, pre-order if you haven't. You must. It's so important so we can continue to get more box sets. And remember, we're going to be doing a Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe virtual celebration on December 9th and 10th, like we did for Sign of the Times Super Deluxe, as well as Welcome to America, since we talked about both of those today. You might want to go look at them, and you can click on them in the slideshow. And we are at the end of our show. So I only went over 4 minutes. I did really good. I'm so proud of myself. So next week will be week 41 of What Did Prince Do This Week? There will be only one page, 184. And I hope that you will come back and hang out with me. Hopefully Michael Dean will be back with me. And let's see what Tanja's saying. Also, yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm not wearing this for nothing. So thank you, Tanja, for reminding us what we should be talking about. Support your local record stores if they have it or can order support. Indeed. And yes, Sakari, the speakers in Paisley are mint. They played the vocals from the breakdown for us on my tour. First visit to Paisley Park in April. Every time I listen to that song now, it makes me sad. And it was like he was standing there in the studio with us. Such an amazing experience. Indeed. All right. So I'm going to play a little bit of this Morris part to go out. I just love it. So I love, actually, I'm wondering who's playing the keyboard parts on this, like if it's Mark or if it's St. Paul. If we ever get St. Paul on here, this is a question I want to ask because I love it so. So I'm going to play a little bit of it, but not a lot, and take us out. Have a good one. See you next week.